The demonstration we'll be doing today is called cleaning pennies. What you'll need for this demonstration is about 10 dull pennies. A dull penny is one that looks like this. It means it's not shiny and it just looks like an old penny. So you'll need about 10 of those. And we'll be using a 1/4 cup of white vinegar and a teaspoon of salt. You're going to pour the vinegar into a non-metal bowl, and then you're going to pour the salt into the vinegar and then stir them together until the salt is all dissolved. Then you're going to want to take 5 of your pennies, your dull pennies, and put them into the vinegar and salt solution. And then you're going to wait about 10 to 20 seconds. So you can see that the pennies are in the bowl. We'll count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you're going to take a paper towel and clean off each one of the pennies, just rubbing the vinegar off of it. And now look, your once dull pennies are very shiny. This happens because the acid in the vinegar reacts with the salt to remove what chemists call copper oxide, which makes the pennies dull. The copper oxide comes from the copper in the pennies reacting with oxygen, creating a dull-looking film on your pennies. Now we're going to do another experiment with the pennies. We're going to put 5 more dull pennies, not the same ones you had in there before, but different ones. Put 5 more in there and let them sit for 10 to 20 seconds, just like the other ones. And have another paper towel on hand. And we'll count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we're going to take each of these pennies out, but we're going to leave them on the paper towel without drying them off like we did with the last pennies. Now what should happen to these pennies is that they should turn a bluish-green color. A chemical called malachite forms on the pennies, which makes them bluish-green. We wipe that off when we use the paper towel to wipe off the first set of pennies. While those pennies are sitting on the paper towel waiting to turn bluish-green, we are going to put a nut into the solution that we had all of our pennies in. And we're just going to leave it there for a little bit. And what should happen is that the nut should collect some of the copper that's been left in the solution. The vinegar removed some of the copper from the pennies. If there's enough copper in the vinegar, the copper will become attracted to the metal in the nuts and the bolts, and they will take on the new copper color. We're going to leave that for a little bit and check on our other pennies that were on the paper towel. Now, the pennies didn't turn bluish-green, but not sure if you'll be able to see this or not. There is bluish-green on the paper towel where the pennies were sitting. Now, I'm not sure if you think this would work with other coins. If you've never noticed, other coins don't get quite as dull as pennies do, unless they've been dropped in the dirt and things like that, but they don't just get dull from handling them. But we are going to try it with a dime. But first we're going to take our nut out and look at the nut. And I do see a little bit of copper color on there. So it did collect some of the copper that was in the salt and vinegar mixture. Next, we're going to put a dime in there, in the vinegar and salt mixture, and see if it does the same thing. It's not making bubblies like the gas bubbles like the pennies did, but we'll wait a little bit and see if it cleans it again. Now, another experiment that you could try is trying different amounts of salt in the vinegar. Maybe try 2 teaspoons or maybe just half or a quarter teaspoon and see if it does the same thing. A lot of times, a certain amount of vinegar and a certain amount of salt will work, but you're more than welcome to experiment with the amounts of salt or even the amounts of vinegar and see if a different amount will work better or worse than this amount, which is a quarter cup of vinegar and a teaspoon of salt, all mixed together. All right, let's check on that dime. Now, the dime wasn't very dirty to begin with, and it doesn't look like it's gotten any shinier than it was before. This is because the vinegar and the salt mixture mixes with the copper oxide of the pennies, but because a dime doesn't have copper on it, it has nothing to react to. So, because the pennies have copper in them, that's why they get shiny, but because a dime does not have copper on it, it will not get any shinier. But that's also why it doesn't get as dull. You can also try other acids like lemon juice, orange juice, or even ketchup to clean your pennies. Ketchup has the same properties as this solution. It has salt and vinegar. It probably has a little bit more or less of both of them, but you are more than welcome to experiment with that at home as well. But you can also try lemon juice with added salt or orange juice with added salt, and it should do the same thing, but it's a good way to experiment and to see what works and what doesn't. What 2 ingredients mixed to clean the pennies? Yes, the salt and vinegar mixed with the copper on the pennies. What happened to the pennies that you didn't rinse off? Well, the pennies didn't turn bluish green, but the paper towel turned a little bit bluish green. Why do you think the nuts turned copper? The nuts turned copper because they collected all the copper pieces that were left in the salt and vinegar solution, and it all attracted to the nut, making it a little bit copper looking. The standards that go with this lesson are Standard 11A2B, collect data for investigations using scientific process skills, including observation, estimating, and measuring. And also 11A2D, use data to produce reasonable explanations. This experiment comes from sciencebob.com, where you can find all other science experiments to do with kids. I hope you enjoyed this experiment and have a great day.